Welcome to Babes, Balls, and Brands, the show where we keep it real about sports, NIL, and building brands that win. I'm Janet Moreira, lawyer, brand protector, and unapologetic sports mom. I understand the grind on and off the field, and I want to give you the playbook. Well, hi. Today's conversation is especially close to my heart as a mom of student athletes and someone who talks with families navigating sports and NIL. I know how important it is to have strong role models and programs that go beyond the game. My guest today is one of those leaders, Chiene Joy Jones, founder of Grow Our Game, a nonprofit that's dedicated to creating access, mentorship, and leadership opportunities for girls in basketball and beyond. So, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Janet, that was an amazing introduction. So thank you so much.
Really
looking forward to this conversation. And definitely when you had even reached out, I was like, oh my God, this sounds amazing. And to, again, help another woman that's, of course, had her own interesting journey and continues to go through that space with her own children. I'm just really happy to be here.
Well, I am really excited to talk with you today. We're going to go back to 2018 when you started Grow Our Game, I believe. And it's now grown into a movement serving hundreds across New York City, creating access to free basketball programming, mentorship, and even workforce development opportunities. Chiene, let's start from the very beginning. What drew you to sports?
So I say this story quite often when I'm asked this question. And so I always have to give credit to one of my childhood friends, Dr. Yvette Battle, who we were going to elementary school together. We were in the same class since we were in kindergarten. And then all of a sudden one year, she ended up having this interest of going to tryouts for a Catholic youth organization, CYO, girls basketball team out here in Queens, which is the borough in which I'm from. And so initially she was like, hey, I really want you to come with me. I'm going to be a little nervous. Can you convince your parents to go with me to these basketball tryouts? Mind you, before that point, I had never played basketball before. I was always a bit of a, adventurous and brave girl. So I always chased around the boys and challenged everybody in school and definitely in my class to, again, just about anything competitive, whether that was a spelling bee or, again, a relay race, right? It was just really part of my own DNA. And I'm not quite sure where I got that from.
And how old was this? How old were you at this point?
This was fifth grade.
Okay,
This was fifth grade. So I was about 10-ish at that point because I have a much later birthday. And so it was interesting because I ended up going simply because my best friend at the time was like, hey, come with me. And so I didn't know that there was this category of other young girls that were similar to me, where it was like, oh, wow, this girl's pretty darn competitive. And, oh, wow, this other girl, she can do some things too. Oh, this girl, she's really fast. It was amazing to be able to be around a group of young girls that were just extraordinary in their own spaces. And I was lucky enough back in fifth grade to be able to try out and actually make this CYO basketball team. And so that was really my first introduction to organized sport early on. And it was definitely something that continued to stay with me all the way up until, my ripe age now.
I mean, it sounds like you walked into a room and you found your people, right? Like you saw other girls who were like you. I know you've explained it as a sisterhood. So tell me how that experience impacts your belief in what sports can do for young girls.
Yeah, so I also think that the one category that I fail to always mention that I have to mention when we're talking about this and the impact, right, of being around these other young girls, but it was also the leadership that was at the table, right? It was the coaches that we had, which were two women of color, which is not normal, right? It's just not normal. And so again, for us to be able to have, but I think that was also something that was really special. And also the fact that our team was very diverse, right? We had a girl that was Greek. We had a girl that was Filipino. We had, of course, young girls of color, whether that be, Black or brown. So we had Latinas on the team as well. Like, it was a super diverse group. And I think that, again, even at that point, we didn't know what was going to come for us into the future, where all of us actually ended up going on off to college to play basketball, which again is not normal. So having these like
Yeah.
not normal experiences, you start to put the pieces together as you get a lot older. And so I think that was a really big piece to just my start, right? And it continued to spark my own curiosity with just how serious I wanted to take it. But I think that the bigger piece for me was just the encouragement of always continuing to do well academically. I think my parents, again, they did not see what the opportunity of basketball could bring for just me being a young girl. And I don't even think they were convinced by the time I even got into high school and started receiving college recruitment letters just how serious basketball was. Like, it was literally my coach having to sit my parents down to explain to them, like,
Right.
this is an opportunity for your daughter to go to college for free. I think the bigger piece for me was being this curious girl and being able to have those curiosities fed and nourished and encouraged by both my family and also, my coaches and
Yeah.
friends.
Well, it sounds like all of these experiences, right, bolstered your confidence, your identity, your leadership, being around other people, seeing women in leadership roles. Um, let's talk about grow your game, right? What do you remember? I believe I read somewhere that your first session had 6 girls in it. What do you remember about that first session?
So it was the coldest winter day, the coldest winter of that year,
Okay.
right?
I was gonna say New
And
York has a
so
lot of cold winters, so we're
no, this was like a record low. It was
Okay,
like
okay.
literally record low. But I had refused to cancel it because we had families confirmed to wanting to attend, right? So we ended up having it over at Gaucho's Gym in the South Bronx. And again, if you're not familiar with the South Bronx, there's just a lot going on in that community. It's very much so being you know, a lot of new construction that's happening in that community, but there's also a lot of poverty. There's also a lot of crime. There's also, this open kind of air drug market now that's happening literally like blocks away. So I think that the bigger piece was knowing that we were going to have it at this gym. Not only was it going to be, for some families, like this space of the unknown, right? Maybe you're not from the South Bronx, maybe you're not from the Bronx, maybe you're not even from Harlem, so you're not familiar with the area. But I think that for me, that was actually where I ultimately played at for AAU basketball in high school. And it's also where I chose to end up coaching my final 7 years of my AAU coaching career right? I was able to return back to New York City Gauchos and again, coaching there for those 7 years. It was tremendous. So it felt like home. Gauchos will always be home. And so being able to have that and commit, right, to that date, despite it being the coldest day of that winter season, was huge for those families to come, and even like the girls that were coaching with me at that time, all of those young ladies are playing college basketball right now, right? Raina Scott at Louisville, and who else is there? Deshauna Carter, who is currently at, I believe, St. Peter's. There's just a few, and Jenna DeGoot, right, who's at Alvernia. Like, these are things that are so important because, again, when we talk about pipeline, that's the type of work that you want. You want young ladies to feel empowered to return back and to give back because
Yeah.
of the positive experience that they had.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that first day, crazy. Never would have expected it. And so it's going to be crazy. September 28th, when it opens up for the fall season. And we're really excited about it.
That's
It's
amazing. Well, what's been the key to your growth? I mean, that's a big leap, right? So having 6 in your first class to having 275 go through your program. What's been the key to that growth that you think?
So I think the first piece has definitely been the power of word of mouth by our families, right? Like literally cultivating this community in the grassroots and finding out that we're actually in like the parent, chat rooms
Right.
and parents are recommending our program. I also think that we have players that are wanting their friends to come, which I think is huge. That's again how I actually started playing the game of
Right.
basketball. But then finally, I think that it's through our strategic partnerships, right? We don't say yes to everyone. That is with sheer intention of making sure that the partnership is sustainable. And so, again, our partnership with Nike, it was like pure genius, and they came to us, right? It's something that we never solicit any of these partnerships. They end up finding us. So the Nike piece that we had that ended up being this like kind of international commercial was huge, winning the Junior Knicks Coach of the Year award, right? And that was also during like the height of the pandemic. That was also huge. Most definitely the New York Liberty returning back to New York City, right? Being able to partner with them. And that was pretty big. And then outside from that, looking at various CBOs throughout New York City that really do believe in the work that we do and are willing to support what we do, right? In a sustainable space. So we're talking about our partnership with NYCHA and our partnership with the PAL and, you know, our partnership with a number of other folks that just do amazing things and really find the synergy of what we do to be impactful for their spaces as well.
Well, that's incredible. As an NIL attorney, I often talk about how sports aren't just about the game or about wins and losses, but it's really about the platform for building confidence and leadership and identity and meeting different people from different walks of life and having all of these sort of really unique experiences develop them as a person, not just in the sport itself, but as a human. And I know that you've said that basketball is sort of just the entry point. So can you expand on how the court becomes a classroom for teaching leadership or communication or other sort of really important life skills?
Oh, absolutely. So I think that, you know, I can start from like a higher level and kind of work my way a little bit lower. And so for any of my girls that enter into the college space, I think that the bigger piece is the fact that you are a student athlete and you are going to be seen as a top dog on your campus, regardless of how big or small you think you are. Right. And so, again, leveraging relationships early on, I think is one very essential piece, especially in athletics administration when there's big dollars that's always being, you know, exchanged and reallocated throughout the department. So when you're talking about setting up meetings, you want to set up your meeting with your athletics director first and foremost. I know that that's a big fish, but that literally begins the networking process for you within your athletics department, right? And again, I only say that because obviously, like, I had a little bit of a cheat code from coaching at NYU, so I see how the how the business
Yeah.
side of things and how the networking part of things with boosters and also with alum really help to not only give you opportunities, but just people that can put a positive word in about your character.
Yeah.
So I think that that's like one of the biggest and most like fundamental pieces first. I think that as we start looking farther down and farther down, it's crazy because in high school, a lot of our kids are already doing the NIL component without even realizing that they are, right? Whether we're talking about social media followings or we're talking about your own brand, like what exactly are you posting? And when they say, you know, by a click, like you can either be on a person's checklist or you can be literally crossed out of a person's list. Super true. And again,
Yeah.
just as much as people are looking at athletes, people are looking at coaches too. Like if your page and, you know, your social media is crazy, who actually is wanting even to have a conversation with you? Not many people, right? And so, you know, I think that this space is so small, the athletic space, the athletics world, it is a very small space. There is so much to be said about the human element of meeting people and being able to have real conversations. I think that that's been really, really helpful. But again, even with NIL, it's so hard because it's moving so fast. And I think that
Yeah.
even for conferences, they're changing they're changing language on contracts, they're changing language on agreements
Oh, yeah.
literally like all the time because how much more money can we get? That's really the game that
Yeah.
everyone's playing right now.
Oh, yeah.
And you're seeing even more like mid majors coming up with bigger NIL buckets, largely because, again, if you can't compete with the huge brand conferences, right? What do? Mid major, okay, let's identify these boosters. Let's identify someone who's gung ho in love, you
Right.
know, with our swim program or gung ho in love with our men's basketball program, right? Men's basketball is so easy because everybody just puts so much money into it. But I think that again, women's basketball, is truly on a destination that I don't think anybody's ever predicted other than us women that like kind of,
Yeah. 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 And what
because we
about,
know how successful we can be if we just receive the monetary support.
in recent years, we've seen a lot more women playing sort of traditional sports played traditionally by men, right? So, like flag football, wrestling, huge, right? Now there are female coaches in the NBA and the NFL, right? Things that were traditionally male. There's now been some entry by women in those spaces. What do you think about this growing presence, and what do you think that means for the next generation of girls in youth sports?
I think it's important that we own those spaces, right? Even though they might be uncharted territory. I also think that it's important to have your elevator pitch ready because at any point you might have someone that's going to ask you, so tell me a little bit more about what you have on your shirt, right? And so I'm prepared with my little elevator pitch on talking about not only the impact, but the why, right? Why do I need them to join me on this mission? And again, it's not even like a sales pitch, it's just like a real pitch, right? And I
Right.
say that because a lot of times when I'm talking to folks, it's not, it usually has nothing to do with monetary support, right? And so I think that that's one piece. But I also think you have to make sure you have the data behind what you're saying, right? Obviously, we know now that even the investment in women's sports is no longer seen as a loss. There's actually a return on investment, right? And so when you're talking about actual metrics and numbers, WNBA, their metrics are crazy right now, right? And again, obviously we have the impact that Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and even Paige Beckers is bringing into this landscape now. But we got more women on the way, y'all.
Yeah, it's not over. It's
It's
just getting
not
started.
over.
Right.
We are just getting started.
Just
And
getting
so
started. Yeah.
I think that's also the power, though, of
Yeah.
NIL.
Yes.
Before, they used to be family household names, right? And literally having to scrounge around to figure out how to get their hair done, how to get their nails done, where to eat, right? Where to eat when the dining
Right.
hall is closed and you are done with practice a little too late, right? Now, it's a space where you're actually receiving, and I still don't think for some it's not even close to still what they deserve. That's a whole
Right.
nother story for another
All
day.
that's another podcast.
Correct. But I
Right.
think at least with the right representation, now
Yeah.
you're able to bring knowledge to the table as opposed to just not knowing,
Yeah.
right? And so I
Yeah.
think that again there is power in that knowledge. And so for all of those,
Yes.
young women and women in general that are stepping into these spaces, we have to own it and also not be scared to share what we need and what we want and also what we're demanding. We want to know what's your portfolio looking like? What were those numbers before? How did you expand it? How did you end up creating impact? What does your impact look like? What is the data and metrics for your impact, right? Like it's more than just words. You need to bring numbers now. And so I think that that's the bigger piece for many of us. And so I think that that's the other piece too. Sometimes we forget who we know.
Right.
And we
Yeah.
have to be able to flex that. We cannot be scared to ask for help, and we cannot be scared to ask for support, especially when we need it the most. So yeah, that would definitely be my advice.
Well, it's funny that you say that because in my work, in my space, obviously I'm a lawyer and have been working in brand and consulting and trademarks for over 2 decades. And so one of the things that I tell, young athletes and families now is that it really matters who you surround yourself with. And I stress the importance of the team, not just on the field or on the court of the sport that you're playing, but also off of the field or the court, right? So it's about who your mentors are, lawyers, who your agent is, your financial advisors, your coaches, who are the people that are kind of helping shape you and push you, and that you really do have to build a team around you. And all the things that you're saying strike me as being very aligned with what I tell families and students too. And I know that your program also makes mentorship a priority. But why do you think that mentorship is so powerful for girls in sports?
So I think that for us specifically, right, with Grow Our Game, because mentorship I think is just essential part of life, right? Like
Yeah.
it's so important. But I think that when we're talking about the game, at least of girls basketball and the girls that we're serving here in New York City. We're based in East New York, Brooklyn, 11207, and Harlem, 10035. And if you're looking at these specific zip codes, these are some of the most at need, under resourced spaces, not just in New York, but in the country. And so when you think about that, you think about, you know, basic economics, right? Like, what can we do to pour in more resources just so the outcomes can look better? And the goal of those outcomes looking better means that it's actually going to relieve tax-paying dollars from support, right? That is so typical.
Oof.
And I think, again, being able to break those barriers while giving the front investment and not having to worry about taxpayers paying that back investment years later, I think that that's essential. And again, it's hard when you talk about girls because it's like, well, the girls are always fine. The girls are going to be okay. Like, we should focus on boys. I get it, but we're forgetting that there is now a new narrative around young girls, especially within inner city communities, being the ones that are actually taking on interesting roles within gangs, within different levels of violence. And I think it's something that we have here in New York City that is a really, really big issue of concern. And I think, again, I try not to get so like into the politics of things because everyone can have their own, opinion on what needs to be done.
Right.
But I think that if you take out the politics of everything,
Yeah.
you just understand that investing within underserved communities is actually great business because, again, like I said, you're not having to worry about that figure skyrocket towards the end. Like
Yeah.
in New York, to be able to house a young girl in a detention facility is upward to $100,000 a year, right? So if we're talking about taxpayer dollars going into supporting a young girl within the prison system, why wouldn't we want to invest early on in this
Right.
young girl that has so much promise and opportunity? And we know that the power of sport will help eliminate so many of those other risk factors,
Yeah.
right? That they could potentially see when they get older.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's the bigger piece, right? Is that when you look at it through a lens of financial support and economics, you look at it as great business because ultimately it is relieving taxpayer dollars in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you think of a moment or a person that's come through one of your programs that you've seen transform, not just maybe in their game, but in becoming a leader, in progressing outside of a space that may be unhealthy for them? Is there an example specifically of someone who's come through your program that you could think of?
Yeah, I mean, again, our program's only been around for 7 years,
Yeah.
right? So I don't have too many like college bound girls yet, but I think about girls that have had, impacts, positive impacts from our program, definitely. And so if you think about all of those super, super young, we call them the chicken nuggets, but all of those young girls
Yeah.
that
Cuties.
started, correct, that they started in our program and they actually have the ability to correct people when they call them, interesting names like, oh, you're being too bossy right now. We've trained them to say that that is not a bad thing. And they're actually not being bossy. They're
Yeah.
being a leader,
Right.
right?
Right.
Taking initiative is being a leader. Bringing yourself to the front of the line, right, is standing in the front of the line is being a leader. So all of these characteristics that get miscommunicated and so many different cues for young girls, these are things that we are literally training them on. I think that that's also the impact of the mentorship program because now they're seeing women that were literally in their shoes as young girls. They're seeing them as successful women now, right? And we know that 94%, right? 94% of women that hold those executive level positions, whether it's in the C-suite, directors, right? We know that they all have a huge piece in common, right? 94% of them do.
Yeah.
And it's all that they played youth sports, right? And so again, we know it's great for economics, right? We know that it's great for not only their development, but we also know that it ends up creating a community of successful leaders in the long run. This is something that's really important. And so that's really part of the message that I want for folks that are even seeing this to truly understand, right? Is that like it is really about the success for these young girls, because when
Yeah,
girls are successful, the world is in a much better space.
100%. Well, what do you think are some of the biggest barriers to access for these girls that are in under-resourced communities? And how do you give them access? How do you get them to come out? What are some of the barriers that you see from getting them to join your program?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is strategic, right? Most of our families are working
Yeah,
class families, right? And they are working. They are working very hard, like multiple jobs. So I think that the first piece is like just understanding that Monday through Friday, 9 to 4, even 9 to 5, it's going to be really hard for anybody to make
yeah,
anything
yeah,
during that time period, right? And again, many of our families also commute to and from work. So it's challenging because now you have such a small window of opportunity to utilize spaces that already, again, in New York City, it is like Fort Knox getting into certain spaces.
yeah,
It is
I
so
bet.
sad. It is so sad. It's so sad. But I think that the other piece is, you know, you have that component,
Yeah,
but I think that part of it is just trying to find those key stakeholders, building those relationships on the ground. Like you have to go into these communities to better understand the community. So being in these spaces and being a part of the conversation, it's also huge. I
yeah,
also dealt in like local community board government stuff up in the Bronx. I did that for about 5 years. That was intentional. I wanted to understand how the city council worked. I wanted to understand how local government worked because most times than not, local government are the ones with the power of the purse, right? And
yeah,
so if you're not understanding how allocations of funding is going within your communities, how are you going to even understand anything when you're making an ask for money,
yeah.
right? Or when you're making an ask for support or for grants. So, I think that those are a couple of ways in which you can be strategic about being able to support inner city communities.
So, having been both a student athlete and a former coach, how do you think NIL would have changed your journey as a student athlete if it existed then?
I think my home would have been paid off by now, right?
Right, right,
My
exactly.
mortgage definitely would have been paid off. But I think, what's so interesting about NIL?
Yeah,
Because again, I went to a Division 3 school, which doesn't mean a lot anymore because of NIL, right? Like it
right.
doesn't matter what division you go to, like you're still able to receive funding. But I think that that fund would have looked very, very different um, back then. And I think a lot of it was because, you know, again, we had an interesting booster club. Like they supported us so much with things. And again, this was before NIL. So now having NIL, it's not only just the booster club that's supporting the program, but you're actually receiving dividends directly from the school. And I think that that's different because when I talked about it earlier, it's like some kids didn't know what they were going to eat. And I did not have any sort of real knowledge on financial anything.
Responsibility or literacy or yeah, yeah,
Zero,
right.
zero. I literally had to learn how to balance a checkbook on my own when I was in college.
Yeah,
I literally had to learn how to pay off credit card bills
yeah,
when I came out of college and had credit card debt, right? And it was like the secret to even like share this with my parents. So I think that that's the bigger piece, right? Is that when you're talking about NIL, now you have to talk about financial literacy.
yeah,
Now you have to talk about having a bank account. Now you have to talk about credit,
yeah.
right? And what that looks like. I think that NIL, like it definitely would have expanded more of your palette, but also your brain
Yes,
on
yes.
these things, which again will make you, even if you mismanage your money. So it's interesting because I think it brings in new people to the table
Yeah,
that may had only used to try to court future pros. Right now, all of these young people, even if they're not going pro after they're done in college, there's still a space of being able to advise financially
yeah,
many of these students because
yeah,
most won't have that knowledge, right? So I think that that would probably be one of the biggest pieces with NIL compared from, now to
yeah.
back then. And if I was a student athlete and we had that type of money, like I would definitely be in strong desire and need of financial advisement.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, there's just so much opportunity to learn as a result of NIL because it is financial literacy. It is being responsible online. It is what you're communicating to people. It is leadership skills. It's talking, like you said, to alumni and business contacts and boosters. And there's a lot of responsibility that falls on student athletes, not only with the sport and with academics, but like the business around it, right? But which is, I think, is why it's so important to have mentorship opportunities and to talk to people who really know what they're doing and who have, the best interests at heart. Okay, we're gonna shift gears away from NIL and back to grow our game. And one thing that stood out to me as a lawyer and as a business owner is like really how your program is connected to workforce development. And I know that there was a specific partnership with the New York City's Summer Youth Employment Program, which sounds like such a smart way to build transferable skills, both on the court to off the court. So, why did you integrate workforce development into your sports nonprofit?
Ooh, Janet, you doing your research, girl. So, so I can tell you this,
Yeah.
right? So, summer youth employment program, it's something that, has been around for many, many, many years. It's actually something that I embarked on back in 1990.
Wow. That's awesome.
97.
Yeah.
And my first job was actually at the at NYPD headquarters, and I was creating like certificates, longevity certificates for like officers that had perfect attendance for their first year, or have been, in the department for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25. Like there's all these different certificates and awards. And so that was actually my job one summer. I also worked at the Taxi and Limousine Commission one summer. I was making like hack license plates, and that was kind of interesting, right? That was actually done by a person. I saw my mom's,
Yeah.
because my mom's been a taxi driver for forever. It was just so wild. But I think that with summer youth, you're obviously getting all of these different skills. But specifically for us in Grow Our Game, it was such a challenge of finding kids in the summer, right? I had my basketball players that were back, but they would come back and then they'd have to go back onto campus for their, summer training. And then they'd come back and then they'd have to go back and get ready for preseason and the start of the fall semester. So I never really had access to my girls for as long of a period as I would have liked, right? And so I never have to worry about them and volunteering. Whenever they're available, they come. But for me, it was like, well, dang, like how the heck am I going to end up getting staffed for summer when summer is also such a huge part of New York City basketball? Like playing outdoors,
Yeah.
that is in essence like a big part of New York City basketball. And so I was able to partner with one of the bigger sites, because again, there's agencies that are working with the New York City, and those specific agencies are then they're allocated a certain number of slots for SYEP. And so then it's their responsibility to identify, or again, partner with potential work sites to house these kids, right? The kids that they're serving. And so we were able to secure 5 slots this year with coaching staff, and it was incredible. And one of them is currently playing at Conn College on the squash team there, right? Like, who would have guessed,
Yeah.
right? Great kid. We have another kid who's returning back. The others are returning back to high school for their senior years. But I think, again, it was great because these students truly wanted to be in an environment of positive youth sports development. And so by that experience, obviously, like, I'm their forever reference, right? And so that's huge too, that they have actually a lifeline to connect them, right? As they apply for jobs, as they express interest, as they continue to network, they could say, hey, I worked for this like pretty cool program that only like, coach girls, and they, did
Yeah.
these crazy affirmations at the end, and, it's just like a sisterhood, a crazy sisterhood. It was a tremendous experience. And I know that for a fact within one of the cohorts that I sit on, they're looking to try to codify that work that we did with some of the other organizations. And I think, again, I'm all for it, because
That's
I think that
amazing.
if it's going to help communities and it's going to help our kids within our communities, let's do it. And they also get paid for doing it, right?
Yeah.
Like, that makes sense. So we were lucky to have our 5 coaches this past summer. Hopefully, we'll be able to expand that number a little bit more because obviously, if we are able to scale up with coaching staff, we're going to be able to scale up with the number of kids that we support. I'm really intentional with capping numbers, largely because I don't want the quality of our programming to be lost in just trying to like grab numbers,
Right.
right? To me, that makes no sense. And again, ultimately, this goal of like just trying to create a tribe of young girls that are like playing basketball and seeing where this can take them to.
What is your vision for the future of girls in sports? What would you like to see happening that maybe isn't happening right now?
Well, I think that it's been an interesting shift. There's so many young boys that I see wearing women's basketball sneakers. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Times or the Atlantic, they just wrote an article about the success and explosion of women's sneakers and how they're just it, right? Like they're actually more popular than men's basketball sneakers. Like women's basketball sneakers are more popular. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But I think that, again, when we talk about grow our game, blue sky, I would love to be able to just have like a permanent location, right? Just a location that we can have access to. Doesn't matter which day, but we would just be able to have access to it. Not necessarily creating our own space, but just being able to have access. I think that that's a big piece.
Well, I mean, I have really enjoyed talking with you today and learning about Grow Our Game and learning about you and your experience. And your work definitely proves what's possible when women lead with purpose and passion in sports because you're making a huge impact on the girls and the communities that you serve. So, thank you for joining me today. Before we wrap, I always ask, are you feeling more babes, balls, or brands today? And why?
I'm actually feeling more balls today. I
Yeah.
think that WNBA playoffs is coming, right? The New York Liberty season just wrapped up. The NCAA women's basketball season is coming up. We have a huge tournament happening in December, the Shark Classic that's coming. I'm just so excited
That's awesome.
for women's basketball and
Yeah.
girls basketball. And I'm also a women's college official, so like officiating is about to like
Yeah.
really kick in full gear pretty soon. So again, all of that said, I'm so excited for women's basketball and for that to start. And it really is part of the lifeline that keeps me going each and every day. So I would definitely have to say balls.
Amazing. Well, Shanae, thank you so much for joining me today. I love what you're building with Grow Our Game. And, it shows that girls don't just play the game, but they also change it. So thank you so much.
Period. Thanks,
Hey.
Janet. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for hanging with me on Babes, Balls, and Brands. Keep grinding and protecting your brand because your story matters and it's just getting started. Stay focused, stay fierce, and remember to always bet on yourself. Till next time.